The stars blinked silently over the cold stretch of space. A rust-colored ship, small and outdated, floated just above a broken field of asteroid debris. Its engines glowed faintly, too weak for a proper chase, but just enough to keep moving. This was the Driftwing, a human ship that, by all known laws of spaceflight, should have been caught long ago. Inside the bridge, Captain Mira Holt sat in the pilot's chair, her eyes locked on the display. Her hands rested calmly on the controls, but her mind moved quickly. She studied the flickering radar. Red dots were gaining. Enemy ships. Incoming. 3 Draxorian fighters. Fast approach. 20 seconds out, said Leaf, her young navigator. He was only 19, but smart and sharp with numbers. Still, his voice was shaking. Hold course, Mira said. But there. I know. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Mira's calm was the kind that silenced a room, even in space. Her crew trusted her, even if they didn't always understand her plans. The Driftwing was old. Human ships were always the slowest in the galaxy. Their tech was outdated, their shields thin, and their engines tired. But somehow, this ship had escaped 5 alien patrols in the last 2 weeks. Mira tapped a small button on her console. A panel slid open to reveal an array of silver spheres, sensor drones. Leaf, deploy Echo Units 3 through 6. Full spread. And start the looped signal Ghost. Leaf obeyed, his hands moving fast now. A moment later, the ship shook slightly as the drones launched into space, scattering away. Each one carried a copy of the Driftwing signal, meant to trick the enemy sensors. In the rear chamber, Mechanic Juno swore under her breath as sparks flew from a half-melted circuit. This junk bucket's on its last breath, Captain, she called through the intercom. We've got 1 clean burn left in the boosters, maybe 2 if I cut life support. Let's not do that, Mira replied dryly. Just hold her together. On the enemy ship far behind them, Commander Threx Voller watched the human vessel's movements with narrowed eyes. His command deck was sleek, cold, and efficient, much like Threx himself. They've deployed more ghosts, said his second-in-command, a tall insectoid alien named Core. 3 signals now, maybe 4. Threx leaned forward. She's trying to hide again, but she'll slip eventually. Mark all signals. Prepare net cannons. No escape this time. Threx hated this chase. It should have been over days ago. 1 small, weak human ship against the full power of a Draxorian pursuit fleet. He didn't understand how this Mira Holt had escaped him 5 times. He didn't care for tricks. He valued strength, order, control. But Mira didn't play by rules. Back aboard the Driftwing, Mira angled the ship sharply toward the debris field ahead. Chunks of broken satellites and old war wreckage drifted in space, frozen in silence. Dangerous for any pilot, but perfect for what she needed. We're heading into the drift, Leaf warned. Visibility's 0 in there. Good, she said. That means they can't see us either. The ship dove into the field. Metal scraped the hull. Lights flickered. 1 piece of wreckage slammed into the side with a loud thud. Juno shouted from below, if we lose another stabilizer, we spin into nothing. Noted, Mira replied, tightening her grip. Behind them, the Draxorian ships hesitated. The debris field was unstable, no clear path. But Threx pushed forward. She won't win again, he muttered. Follow her. As the enemy fighters entered the field, Mira's drones sprang into action. Each one split off, bouncing signals off debris, confusing sensors. The Driftwing powered down to minimum output, drifting silently. Mira guided her ship by memory, eyes scanning for landmarks she remembered from smuggler runs long ago. Minutes passed. Alarms stopped. The radar quieted. They've lost us, Leaf whispered. Mira didn't smile, but a slight nod showed her approval. Juno, status? Still flying. Barely. Shields at 10%. No weapons. But we're not dead. That's good enough for today. The crew exhaled. Another escape. Another day survived. But Mira knew Threx would keep coming. He wouldn't give up. Not until he caught her, or until she showed him why the slowest ship in the galaxy could never be caught. She looked out the window, watching the stars blink beyond the debris. Let's make it harder next time, she said quietly. The Driftwing floated silently between 2 fractured hulls of long-dead battlecruisers, hidden in the shadows of the debris field. Captain Mira Holt leaned back in her chair, eyes closed, listening to the gentle hum of the ship's core. It wasn't much, just enough energy to keep life support stable and systems barely alive. But silence meant safety. On the bridge, Leaf checked the scanners for the 100th time. They're still circling outside the field, he said, eyes narrowed. They don't know where we are. Mira opened her eyes. They won't come in blind. Draxorian pilots are trained, but they're not reckless. Leaf frowned. You sure they won't just shoot the field until something breaks? They like control. Chaos spooks them. That's why we're still alive. Below deck, in the engine room, Juno was half buried under a tangled mess of wires and burned-out circuits. She wiped her greasy hands on her jumpsuit and barked into the comm. Captain, if you plan on outsmarting aliens again, maybe give me more than half a working engine next time. Myra's voice came calmly through the speaker. You've made worse things fly. Juno grunted. Fair. Mira stood and walked through the narrow corridor to join her mechanic. The lights flickered overhead, dim and uneven. The drift wing was a relic, older than anyone else aboard. Once used as a cargo hauler, then a smuggler's ship. Now it was a ghost, drifting where no one else dared. Juno handed her a piece of scorched metal. See this? That's from the primary power link. We've got one clean burn left. After that, we drift for real. Mira examined it. Make it last. Any chance we stop running soon? We stop when they stop chasing. Juno shook her head. You know they won't. I know. Back on the Draxorian warship, Commander Threx stood in the center of his command deck, watching the rotating 3D map of the debris field. He tapped a clawed finger against the glass screen. She's in there somewhere, he growled. Core, his insectoid second, adjusted the zoom. But no signal. The human ship vanished. It's a trick, Threx said. They're using decoys. Old human tech. Crude, but effective. He hated admitting that. Threx had trained for decades to lead Draxorian fleets. He had destroyed pirate colonies, put down rebel uprisings, and hunted smugglers across entire systems. But this one ship, this drift wing, was something different. It didn't fight. It didn't flee in straight lines. It danced in and out of systems, vanished into shadows, and left confusion behind. And the worst part? Mira Holt made him look foolish in front of the council. He stared at the map. Mark every echo signal. Begin scanning for heat traces and radiation leaks. If she's hiding, she's leaking something. Core hesitated. That may take hours. Days. I'll wait. Humans always make mistakes. But Mira wasn't like other humans. Back in the drift wing, the crew gathered in the mess hall, a small space barely big enough for 4 chairs and a cracked table. The air smelled faintly of metal and old food packs. Mira sipped from a mug of bitter coffee, while Leaf reviewed their navigation options. There's a narrow corridor through the Nabari cloud, he said. No patrols, but high radiation. Dangerous. What else? Backtrack to Cora. 9. Smuggler Haven. But risky. Could be informants. Juno raised an eyebrow. You think they'd sell us out? Mira nodded once. If the price is right, yes. So where do we go? Leaf asked. Mira studied the star map. She tapped a small red dot, barely visible. Here. The exile path. Juno frowned. That's not a path. That's a death zone. Exactly, Mira said. No one expects us to go there. The exile path was an unstable corridor of space, twisted by old black hole activity. Navigation was nearly impossible. Most ships that entered never came out. But Mira had studied it for years. She'd been through once, barely. She'd mapped fragments, tracked shifts, learned how to read its chaos. She stood and looked around at her crew. They have speed, weapons, fleets. We have one thing they don't. Leaf tilted his head. What's that? Mira gave a small, knowing smile. Imagination. The room went quiet. Juno chuckled softly. That's not in the manual. Mira walked back to the bridge. Neither are we. As she sat back at the helm, she sent out one more ghost signal, a false trail leading toward the smuggler haven. Let Threx chase shadows. The drift wing would slip into the one place no one dared to follow. In the darkness beyond, the stars shifted slowly. The hunt was far from over. The drift wing drifted silently through the edge of the Nabari cloud. Pale blue gases curled outside the windows like slow smoke. Navigation was nearly impossible here. Stars flickered in and out of view as radiation messed with the scanners. But Captain Mira Holt moved forward, calm as ever. Inside the ship, tension hung in the air. We need fuel, Leaf said, his voice low. We can't reach the exile path without a full charge. We barely have enough for one more jump. Mira didn't look up from the navigation panel. I know. Juno's voice crackled over the comm from the engine room. Main reactor is hungry, Captain. It's eating itself alive down here. We need to stop. Soon. Mira studied the old star charts. One option appeared, an abandoned supply station called Mira Outpost 12. It had been shut down years ago after a mining accident. Not on most maps anymore. Not visited often. It was perfect. Or dangerous. Outpost 12, Mira said. Dead station. No patrols. No surveillance. Could be a trap. But it has what we need. Leaf frowned. You think Threx would predict we'd go there? He might, Mira said. But he doesn't know the way we think. That gives us one chance. 20 minutes later, the driftwing dropped out of the cloud, and the outpost came into view. A rusting wheel-shaped structure floated in orbit around a dead rock planet. Most lights were out. The docking arms were half broken. No movement. No signals. Looks empty, Leaf said. Mira didn't answer. She scanned the area. Passive sensors only. No pings, no scans that could give away their presence. Her instinct screamed that something wasn't right, but they were out of time. We go in, she said. The docking bay opened slowly, gears grinding like old bones. The driftwing eased inside. The magnetic clamps grabbed the ship with a sharp clang. For a moment, all was still. Juno suited up and headed out first, moving cautiously into the station. She waved a light through the dusty air. The place was silent, cold, abandoned, but it wasn't empty. Far above, hidden in the rafters of the broken control deck, a small camera activated. Its red light blinked once, then disappeared. On the Draxorian warship, Threx watched the grainy image appear on his screen. She took the bait, Kerr said, satisfied. Should we move in? Not yet, Threx replied. Let her think she's safe. Let her dock. Let her drop her guard. Then we take her ship and her crew. Alive. Threx leaned forward, his eyes sharp and full of hunger. She's clever, but not invincible. Back on the outpost, Juno connected the old fuel pump to the driftwing. A soft hum began as energy flowed into the ship's cells. Mira stood in the shadows of the airlock, watching the hallway. Something's wrong, she whispered. Leaf, standing beside her, asked, What is it? Mira didn't move. Too clean. Too easy. She turned back to the ship and tapped a hidden panel near the cargo bay. Inside, behind a false wall, sat a small one-man shuttle pod. Barely more than a seat with an engine. Time for a ghost trick, she said. Within minutes, Mira and Leaf had transferred decoy systems, one of the driftwing's signal emitters, a dummy core, and a few bags of scrap metal, into the pod. Juno detached the pod and pushed it out through the far end of the dock, where it drifted slowly out of the station. Then Mira powered down the driftwing. Lights off. Systems cold. No heat signature. She sealed the real ship into a hidden sub-bay deep in the station, buried beneath layers of scrap metal and false panels. It was invisible to outside scans. Then the three of them climbed into maintenance suits and slipped into the ventilation shafts, silent as shadows. 10 minutes later, Threx's ship dropped out of warp above the station. He moved fast. Draxorian soldiers stormed the docking bay. They surrounded the drifting pod. They scanned the signal. It matched. Same ID. Same pattern. Threx stepped onto the deck, wearing full armor. Where is she? He demanded. They opened the pod. Nothing. Just junk. Just a shell. Threx's face twisted in rage. Search the station. His soldiers spread out. Room by room, corridor by corridor. But there was nothing. No ship. No crew. No trace. By the time they realized it was a trick, the real driftwing was already gone. Mira had taken the ship out through a maintenance hatch on the underside of the outpost. She launched in silence, engines cold, drifting on momentum. No burn. No trail. Only darkness. As the Draxorian fleet spun in circles, searching ghosts, Myra's ship slowly powered up in the black void. She looked out the window. That's 6 times, she said softly. Leaf nodded. They're going to be furious. Mira allowed herself a small smile. Good. That means they're not thinking clearly. Behind her, Juno kicked back in her chair, breathing hard. Remind me why I'm still on the ship? Mira didn't answer. The exile path lay ahead. They would reach it in 12 hours. And then the real game would begin. The driftwing cruised in quiet space now, away from the dead outpost and the trap they had escaped. No alarms. No chases. Just the slow hum of the repaired core and the faint lights of nearby stars blinking through the main window. But peace didn't mean rest. Inside the ship, tension grew again, not from outside threats, but from the weight Mira had been carrying alone. It was time to share it. She gathered the crew in the main cabin. Leaf sat at the navigation table, legs folded up in the chair, chewing on a protein bar. Juno leaned against the wall with her arms crossed, tired and covered in engine grease. The air was thick with recycled oxygen and nerves. Mira stood before them, holding a small black cube in her hand. It was smooth and heavy, no markings, no lights. Just cold metal. I've been keeping this since the first escape, she said. This is what Threx wants. Not just the ship. Not just us. Leaf stopped chewing. What's on it? Data, Mira said. Information stolen from the Draxorian labs on Virex Prime. Test records. Human colony trials. Something. Dark. Juno's eyes narrowed. You mean weapons? Mira shook her head. Worse. Experiments. They were using human settlements for research. Studying how fear spreads. Monitoring behavior under isolation. They created threats just to see how we'd react. Why? Leaf asked, stunned. Myra's voice stayed level, but her words cut deep. Because they don't see us as equals. They see us as a variable. A sample. A species to control or erase. Silence filled the room. Juno broke it first. So we're not just running. We're carrying proof. Mira nodded. That's why they're chasing us so hard. If this gets out, the Draxorian Council falls. The other empires turn on them. War breaks out. Leaf rubbed his face. What are we supposed to do with that? We're just 3 people on a dying ship. We're not just anything, Mira said. We're free. And that's what they fear. She placed the cube on the table. I wanted to wait until we were out of danger. Now I'm not sure there's any safe left. We can send it. Right now. Broadcast it to the neutral colonies, the pirate networks, the news grids. Juno frowned. Then they really won't stop. We'll be hunted forever. We already are, Mira said. Leaf looked between them. So, we vote. Mira nodded. This is bigger than me. Bigger than us. The room went quiet again. Juno stepped forward first. Send it. People deserve to know. Leaf hesitated, then gave a slow nod. Do it. Mira picked up the cube and slid it into the comm panel. A soft click echoed as the system came alive. This is Captain Mira Holt, Vessel Driftwing, Human Registration. She spoke clearly, steadily. Attached is unfiltered, unedited Draxorian research data recovered from Virex Prime. Share it. Hide it. Save it. The truth is yours now. She hit send. The data burst transmitted in pulses, splitting into fragments and scattering across multiple channels. Some reached trading networks. Others jumped from relay to relay, bouncing through untraceable routes. Within minutes, the secret was no longer a secret. Mira leaned back in her chair. It's done. But peace didn't follow. Moments later, Leaf's console lit up red. Multiple signals, he said, voice tightening. Fast approach. 2 warships. Draxorian. They tracked the pulse, Mira said. How? Juno asked. They have deep-net readers, she replied. We bought time, not escape. She turned to Leaf. Set course for the exile path. Now. The ship shuddered as its engines flared. Space outside blurred as the Driftwing jumped into motion. Stars stretched around them as they moved at maximum speed toward a region few dared enter. Then, suddenly, warning lights. Something's wrong, Juno shouted. Overload in the rear engine. Mira checked the screen. A thermal spike. One of the main thrusters had reached critical heat. Too much stress. Too little repair. If we keep going, it explodes, Juno said. We need to shut it down. We can't stop, Leaf argued. They'll catch us. Myra's mind raced. Then she saw it, an option no one would like. There's an escape pod in Bay 3, she said. We launch it with a strong heat signal. We make it look like we're abandoning ship. They'll go after it. Buy us a window. But who's going in the pod? Juno asked. Silence. Then Leaf stood up. I'll do it. No, Mira said quickly. I'm the lightest. It'll move faster. And I know how to fake system chatter. Juno stepped toward him. You'll get caught. Maybe. Or maybe they'll think it's all a trick and waste time trying to prove it. Either way, someone's got to go. Mira met his eyes. He was scared. But steady. You'll need a recall beacon, she said softly. He nodded. They loaded the pod. A full decoy heat pack, signal booster, and Leaf himself, wrapped in a pressure suit with a pulse tracker Mira could ping from the exile path if they made it. As the pod launched into space, Mira watched it vanish among the stars. Then she turned back to her chair. Full speed, she said. Get us into the storm. Behind them, the warships followed the pod, scanning, closing in. For now, the trick worked. But it had cost them. And ahead lay the exile path, the most dangerous route in space. The stars around the Driftwing began to fade. One by one, they disappeared behind the thick clouds of dust and twisted gravity that made up the exile path. This was no normal part of space. It was dark, broken, and full of dead energy. Somewhere far behind them, Leaf was drifting in a decoy pod, alone and silent. Mira tried not to think about that now. She gripped the controls tighter. Engine steady, Juno said from behind her, sweat shining on her forehead. Hull is holding for now. Mira nodded, eyes locked on the forward display. Outside, the screen was nearly black. Only faint flickers of blue static passed through every few seconds, small sparks from fractured electromagnetic fields. The exile path wasn't really a path. It was a wound in space. Long ago, a black hole had passed through this sector. It didn't swallow everything, but it twisted the rules of motion, gravity, and time. No one mapped it. No one dared. The few who entered rarely returned. But Mira had been here once before, and she remembered the way. Cut the engines, she said. Juno blinked. What? Cut them. We drift from here. You sure? No one flies through the path. You let the gravity pull you. You steer at the right moments, nothing more. Any more thrust, and the ship tears apart. Juno took a deep breath and shut down the engines. The low rumble faded. The drift wing became weightless, helpless, just a leaf in a black current. Mira touched a control panel and pulled up an old map. It wasn't digital. It was hand-drawn, with scribbled paths, markings, and strange symbols. She had made it during her first escape through this place years ago. Bring up visual overlay, she said. Juno activated the external cameras. The screen filled with static and gray. No radar. No scanners, Mira whispered. Only this. She laid the paper map flat across the dash and began to steer. Each move was careful. Small taps. Tilts. Just enough to shift the ship through the strange pockets of space. The laws here bent like soft metal. One wrong turn, and they would spin into a loop forever. As they moved deeper, the light disappeared entirely. Blackness wrapped around them like a shroud. Not even stars. Just silence. Suddenly, metal groaned. The ship tilted left. Graph spike, Juno shouted. Starboard side. Pulling us in. Mira leaned the controls left, adding counterbalance thrusters. The drift wing shuddered, but kept moving. Sparks danced outside the windows. Hold together, Mira whispered. Just a little farther. A loud crash echoed through the ship. Debris hit aft panel. Juno called out. We've lost shielding on deck too. Mira didn't flinch. Seal the deck. Shift weight to port. Juno ran to the control wall, punching in commands. She moved like someone who had been here too long, who knew this ship better than she knew herself. Finally, after what felt like hours, a faint light appeared in the far corner of the screen. Not a star. A swirl. A tunnel of spinning gas. Mira's eyes narrowed. There, she said. That's the exit vortex. That's our way out? Juno asked, eyebrows raised. It'll collapse in 7 minutes, Mira said. Maybe less. Then we go now. Mira reignited the engines only at half power. The ship surged forward. The hull rattled. Alarm screamed. Behind them, a massive shape appeared on the radar. A Draxorian cruiser. Juno's face went pale. Threx? Mira didn't answer. She already knew. He had followed them. How? Juno gasped. He couldn't have. He found the path, Mira said quietly. Or tracked the trail. The massive ship began to fire. Plasma bolts shot through the path, shaking the edges of the tunnel. One bolt clipped the wing of the drift wing. Fire erupted on the left side. Fire in the external vent. Juno shouted. We're leaking pressure. Redirect oxygen, Mira said calmly. We'll glide the last stretch. Mira turned the ship slightly, using the force of the enemy blast to swing around a curve of gravity. The drift wing twisted dangerously, but momentum carried them forward. Closing fast. Juno warned. The vortex is shrinking. Then we don't stop. Mira activated the last booster. The drift wing jolted forward with a violent push. The ship screamed. Metal tore. Lights flickered. They shot through the spinning tunnel, just as it began to collapse. The pressure stopped. The screen turned blue. Stars reappeared. They were out. Behind them, the vortex folded in on itself, and the Draxorian ship vanished in the collapse. It was too large to fit through. The path had shut. Gone. Juno collapsed into the co-pilot chair, breathing hard. We made it. Mira stared at the stars ahead. Not yet, she said. We have one more thing to do. She tapped the console and searched for Leaf's signal beacon. It was weak. Faint. But still blinking. He's alive, Mira said. Juno looked over. You think we can find him? We have to, Mira replied. The stars stretched ahead. The ship was wounded. The crew was down to 2. But the mission had survived. And so had the truth. The drift wing floated quietly in deep space. Its hull was scarred, its engines damaged, but it was alive. The ship had made it out of the exile path, carrying its 2 remaining crew members and something far more powerful than weapons or fuel. Truth. Mira stood at the front window of the bridge. Her arms were crossed, her face calm, but tired. Blue stars glittered in the distance, scattered like cold dust across the black. Behind her, Juno worked on the navigation system, trying to keep what remained of the ship's controls from falling apart. Pulse beacon's still weak, Juno said. But I've narrowed the signal. It's coming from the outer ring of the Sahara Drift. Mira nodded. That's where the pod landed. It had been 2 days since they left the exile path. 2 long, quiet days. Mira had checked the signal every hour. It blinked slowly, softly, like a heartbeat in the dark. Leaf was out there. Still alive. We're almost there, Mira said. The ship limped toward the beacon. There was no rush now, no chasing fleet, no burning alarms. The data had been sent. The Draxorian secret was out. Neutral systems were already broadcasting fragments. Refugee colonies were speaking out. Protests had begun on 6 trade planets. The galaxy had changed. Mira didn't need to run anymore. But she had one last promise to keep. As they entered the edge of the Sahara Drift, the signal grew stronger. There, Juno pointed. Pod is caught in a low-gravity pocket. Still stable. Mira adjusted the ship's position. The driftwing coasted slowly into the hollow region of space where gravity was soft and currents flowed like wind. A small black dot appeared ahead. The pod. Juno activated the docking arm, bringing it in, slowly. The mechanical arm extended from the side of the ship. It wrapped around the pod and pulled it gently into the bay. As it locked into place, Mira didn't wait. She ran down the corridor, heart pounding in her chest. The airlock hissed. The pod door slid open. Leaf sat inside, pale and exhausted, wrapped in a foil blanket. He blinked at the sudden light and smiled faintly. Took you long enough. Mira helped him up. Nice distraction. Thought I was going to pass out, he muttered. How bad is the ship? Mira smiled. Still flying. He looked around the corridor and patted the wall. Of course she is. Juno appeared behind Mira, arms crossed. Next time, we vote on who gets to be bait. Leaf grinned weakly. Deal. They made their way to the bridge together, the 3 of them, worn, scarred, and quiet. The ship creaked around them like an old house in the wind. Mira sat back in the captain's chair. On the main screen, a news broadcast rolled silently. Images of Draxorian council chambers in chaos. Protests on neutral worlds. Dissent inside the Empire. A reporter spoke with urgency. Data confirmed by multiple sources. Human settlements were used for live research without consent. The Draxorian Council denies involvement. Independent systems are calling for sanctions. War remains a possibility, eh? Mira muted the feed. It's out, Leaf said. Mira nodded. Now the galaxy decides what to do with it. Juno leaned back in her chair. What about us? We disappear, Mira said. Let the story grow without us. She tapped a few buttons. The Driftwing's ship ID was wiped from the records. Navigation trail erased. Engines powered down to drift. She stood, looking out the window. No one needs to know our names. Just what we did. Outside, the stars shined without sound or judgment. Later that night, Mira sat alone in the observation deck. The crew slept quietly. The ship floated near a small, nameless moon. It was calm now. Safe. In the distance, she saw a freighter pass by. It didn't stop. Didn't scan. Just moved on through the dark, unaware that the most wanted human ship in the galaxy rested only a few clicks away. Mira smiled to herself. The driftwing wasn't fast. It just couldn't be caught. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. The stars reflected on the glass around her. Tomorrow they'd move again. Maybe to another colony. Maybe to a hidden system. Or maybe nowhere at all. Because they were free.